All right, these notes are going to go over the 4 types of angles that you have to know for the geometry topic pertaining to 8th grade. You do not get a protractor. Everything we do regarding angles is by knowing your definitions and making the calculations that way. All right, so the first type that we are going to go over are what are known as vertical angles. And with each type, I'm going to draw a picture, and I'm going to show you some information as well as give you a definition about it. All right, the vertical angles are pairs of opposite angles that are formed by 2 intersecting lines. Okay, and when you have those 2 pairs of, or those 2 angles that make up a pair, right, they are always equal. So vertical angles are congruent. And remember, congruent is another word for saying equal. So now let's take a picture of what I'm talking about and see if we can figure out how to identify all the pairs of vertical angles that you're going to see. All right, so over here off to the side under the actual type of vertical angles, that's where I'm going to draw the picture, and then we'll do all the information writing on the right-hand side. So the picture I want you to draw is just take 2 lines, straight lines, and make them cross. That's 2 intersecting lines. You have now formed 4 angles in this picture. You have angle 1 right here, which is this one. You have angle 2 up here, which is this one. You have angle 3 over here, which is this one. And you have angle 4 down here, which is this one. Remember, angles are the inside pieces that are joined by those 2 rays. All right, so when we look at angles 1, 2, 3, and 4, all right, we have 2 pairs of vertical angles in this picture, right, and they are opposite of each other. The best way to remember it is that they're straight across from each other, right? So if you start at angle 1, straight across from angle 1 is angle 3. So angle 1, and remember you have to use your angle symbol, and angle 3 are vertical, which means whatever angle 1 is measurement-wise, angle 3 is going to be the exact same number. Okay. When you look at angle 2, which is this one right up here, if you go straight across from him, okay, you see angle 4. So angle 2 and angle 4 are vertical. All right, so they're the ones that are straight across from each other. In the past, we've used ways to help students remember by making a bow tie. So if you take angles 1 and 3, let me undo some of my work here. Okay, let me clear out this picture, and that'll actually help you out a little bit more, see what I'm talking about. When you have angles 1 and 3, it makes a bow tie. So the vertical angles are your bow tie angles, right? So you can look at it that way, right? Or you can think about it as a V turned sideways, touching another V. The only thing the vertical angles are going to have in common is that point where they touch right in the middle. So you have those 2, or you have something like this, where the only place they share is that vertex right in the middle, right? That's what helps you identify them as vertical, right? And like I said, we were talking about that the measures of them are equal. So if the measure of angle 1, remember that M on the outside means measure of angle, right? Measure of angle 1 is 42 degrees. Okay, then that means that the measure of angle 3 in our picture is also 42 degrees, because vertical angles are always congruent. There's no math to do to this. If they're vertical, they're equal, right? If the measure of angle 2 is 128 degrees, then the measure of angle 4 is also 128 degrees, because those 2 are vertical. So just remember that vertical means equal. They end in the same 2 letters, so that can help you out there too. All right, so that's one of the types of angles we're going to deal with. The next type of angle that we're going to be dealing with doesn't really have any calculation pieces to it. There's no numbers attached to it. It's just being able to identify them. And these are known as adjacent angles. Okay, when something is adjacent to somebody or something else, it is side by side to them. Your next door neighbor at home is adjacent to your house, right? So you're going to hear me say a lot about, you know, when you share a fence, that's your adjacent partner there. All right, so in an angle though, adjacent angle are angles that share a common ray. Remember, ray is an endpoint that has an arrow at the other end, and side. So basically, if it's given to you angle-wise in letters, which we'll do here in a second with letters, 2 letters have to be the same. That's an easy way that you can determine if you're dealing with adjacent angles or not. If they don't have 2 letters the same, then you don't have adjacent angles. All right, so once again, draw yourself 2 intersecting lines. This time that we're going to put letters on it. We're not doing angles 1, 2, 3, and 4. All right, so there's going to be a dot in the middle, and there's going to be a point at each end of each line, and then we're going to give them letters. So we're going to have X is right in the middle, and then go around A, B, C, and D. All right, so here is our angle formations that come off of 2 intersecting lines. Right, you still have 4 angles here, but instead of numbering them by angle, you're going to name them by letters. And we talked about how you can name different angles in class already, so this should not be something that I'm speaking to you for the first time with. All right, so just go ahead and start with one. If you start with angle AXB, so angle AXB, and you want to find out who's adjacent to it, all right, well, pretend there's a house right here. Okay, and that's you. Okay, you want to figure out who's your next door neighbor. Well, you got 2 of them, so angle AXB is going to have 2 adjacent angles to it, but you're going to have to list them separately. All right, so we'll list angle AXB twice. All right, so the first one we want to list is its first neighbor, which we'll designate this side over here as its next door neighbor now. So that's BXC. Remember, X always has to be in the middle. So angle BXC. And I told you that adjacent angles always had to have 2 letters the same. So if you notice, AXB has the XB, BXC has the BX. Those are the same 2 letters. That's how you know if you're going to have adjacent angles to it. All right, so then go back to angle AXB, and we want to go to his other side, to the other angle, his other next door neighbor, which will be over here in green, AXD. So angle AXD is adjacent to AXB. And if you look for the 2 letters, AX, AX. So you know you've got a pair of adjacent angles. All right, so that's 2 of them. All right, but there's a lot more in this picture than just those 2. All right, so you have to look for a little bit more. All right, AXB is done though. All right, your house, you've already found your 2 neighbors. So move your house. Let's pretend your house is now over here in blue. Okay, at angle BXC. There's a neighbor you haven't named yet. Your next door neighbor would be angle CXD down here. Okay, so angle CXD is adjacent to BXC. And notice XC and CX. It doesn't matter the order of the letters, it's do they have 2 letters the same. So that's a pair of adjacent angles. All right, move your house again. Okay, so we're going to put your house right here. If your house is at angle CXD, then the next door neighbor that you haven't named yet is over here AXD. And if you notice, XD is the 2 letters it has in common. Right now, if you try to put your house over here on the green side, and you go to name your neighbors, AXD, you've already named the neighbor AXB. Okay, you have that one right here, the second one on our list. And if you go to the right-hand side where the black house is, that next door neighbor, you just named that one there. So you have already named every set of adjacent angles in this picture. Right? If there are 4 angles, you're going to have 4 sets of adjacent angles. We don't know anything about their measurements. There's nothing that says they're equal, not equal, etc. All right, all we know is that they are side by side, next door to each other, touching one side. So that's what you've got to remember about adjacent. All right, there is no actual calculation. You will have to look at a picture of angles and name the adjacent angles. All right, so just make sure you keep that mentally in your head. Okay, now the last 2, you are going to have some definite calculations attached to it. They each have their own number attached to them. The first one we're going to deal with is supplementary angles. Right? And these are angles whose degrees add up to 180. So the magic number on this one is 180. And there's a reason behind this. Right? When you are looking at supplementary angles, right, these are angles that are going to make a straight line. So the easiest way to remember this is the word straight line. And a straight line looks like this. That's also known as a straight angle. And a straight angle is worth 180 degrees. Right? So your angles, no matter how many are in there, 2, 3, 4, it doesn't matter, have to total 180 if they make a straight line. Right? So when we look at a picture, I'm going to go back to using my numbers here. Right? Again, I'm back to the intersecting lines with angles 1, 2, 3, and 4. If I'm looking to name the supplementary angles, right, it's the two angles that when you put them together make a straight line, and they have to be connecting to each other right now. Right? They don't always have to be touching each other in any picture, but in this picture they will be touching each other. Right? So for a set of it, if we have the measure of angle 1 and we add to it the measure of angle 2, you can see that angle 1 and angle 2 together made this straight line happen. So that's going to equal 180. So once you know what one of the numbers is, you can figure out the other number. Right? So let's keep looking for our other straight lines. If you find angles 2 and 3, those make a straight line. So the measure of angle 2 plus the measure of angle 3 also totals 180. Okay? And then if you go with 3 and 4, because we haven't used those two numbers, the measure of angle 3 and the measure of angle 4 is going to make 180 degrees. And there's one more set we haven't named, 1 and 4. Make this straight line right here. Right? So the measure of angle 1 plus the measure of angle 4 equals 180. So everywhere you have a straight line, the angles that make up that straight line have to total 180. Right? So here's how this works mathematically. If I tell you that from our picture, the measure of angle 1, okay, is 75 degrees, you want to be able to tell me what the measure of angle 2 is. Well, if you look in the picture, angles 1 and angles 2 are supplementary, which means they have to total 180. So if you know that 180 is your total, subtract the number you do have, 75, and you get 105. Okay, so that means angle 2 has to be 105 degrees, because together these two have to total 180 or they're not supplementary. Right? So keep that in mind. This is where we don't need a protractor. As long as you know that you have a number that totals 180, you're just going to subtract to get your answer. You don't need to measure anything. Okay. The other thing that I want to make sure you understand about supplementary angles is they do not have to touch. If you have an angle that's right here and it's 60 degrees, in order to have another supplementary angle to match it, you're going to have an angle that is 120 degrees, right? Because 120 plus 60 is supplementary. These two angles are supplementary. They don't have to be touching. As long as they total 180, then you're good. Okay, so most of the time they will touch just because it's the way the pictures are drawn, right? But they don't have to be touching in order for you to name them. Okay, now if they are in a picture where they are touching, they're supplementary and adjacent. If they're like this, they're just supplementary because they're not touching. All right, the fourth and final category, before we start looking at some other pieces, and this is one that if you're going to get anything mixed up, it's going to be supplementary and this one right here, complementary. And I have some corny ways to help you remember which ones are which. All right, so supplementary angles measured, they totaled up to 180. In complementary angles, these are angles whose total is 90 degrees. So the magic numbers are 180 and 90. You have to know those numbers and you have to know which word goes with which. All right, so in a complementary angle situation, you don't have intersecting lines because that doesn't make right angles. You're going to have a right angle situation, and then you're going to have another ray coming out of it that splits it into two angles. So here's angle 1, here's angle 2. Together, they make that 90-degree corner. Okay, so when we're looking at measurement purposes, the measure of angle 1 plus the measure of angle 2 is going to total 90 degrees, not 180. It made a corner, not a straight line. Right? So if I tell you that the measure of angle 1 is 25 degrees, and you have to figure out the measure of angle 2, again, you don't need a protractor for this. This is where you just subtract. 90 is your total, minus 25, okay, which gives you 65. So angle 2 has to be 65 degrees. Make sure you put those degree symbols. Those are your units, right? And you can double check behind you. Does 25 plus 65 make 90? If it does, you know you did your calculation right. But you don't ever get a protractor to determine this, right? And these are known as complementary angles. Just like supplementary, complementary angles can be adjacent, side-by-side touching, like they are in this picture, or they can be separated. You can have a 30-degree angle and a 60-degree angle, and they're separated, and they're going to ask you, are those complementary? And the answer you're going to have to give is yes, because 30 plus 60 makes 90. So these two angles are also complementary, even though they're not touching. Okay, so they are just complementary. Whereas back to our other picture, those are complementary and adjacent because they're side-by-side neighbors. Okay, so you have to be careful and make sure you're using the vocabulary as best as you can. Okay, now the trick to remembering these and the silly way to help you with this, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. All right, for supplementary, the best tricks that I've got for you is the letters it starts with. S for supplementary and S for straight. If you can remember that, then you'll remember that it's 180 degrees. Another way that you can look at it is if you take your S and you connect it around to look like an 8, put a 1 in front of it, 0 behind of it, it makes 180. You can't do that with the word complementary. What you can do with the word complementary, though, okay, CO from the word complementary also starts the word corner, CO. It makes a corner, so you can remember a complementary corner. Or you can take the C, and this is the one that most people remember, and the O, take the C, turn it into a 9. Now I've got 90. So complementary's magic number is 90. You need to figure out a way to take and memorize those two numbers and make sure that you don't mix them up. So I've given you a couple little silly tricks. Figure out which one works for you and that you'll remember and actually use it. Okay. All right, another piece that you're going to do with these angles other than identify them by picture is you're going to have to take and find the complement and supplement, which once again goes back to complementary and supplementary. So they're going to give you one angle measurement, not in the picture, just a number, and you're going to have to find each one of these, the complementary number and the supplementary number. All right, so if I give you 63 degrees as your starting number, that's your starting angle. You don't need a picture of it, you just need to know that you have 63 degrees. If you are going to find the complement, remember the complement's magic number is 90, so you would have to take and do 90 minus 63, and the complement of 63, or the other number that goes with it to make 90, is 27 degrees. That's your answer, okay? Because 63 plus 27 gives us our 90, but the way you figure it out is 90 minus 63. Now for the supplement, the magic number is 180. So you're going to start with 180, subtract the 63, and when you get 117 degrees, that's the supplement, okay, because 63 plus 117 is 180. So depending on what they're asking for, sometimes they'll ask you for both, sometimes they'll only ask you for one. Make sure you answer it correctly based on what they're giving you. Okay. The other situation is sometimes comes out if your original number is 104 degrees and they ask you to find the complement and the supplement. Well, for the complement, the magic number is 90. You can't go over 90. Well, 104 is already over 90. So that means that there is no complement. There's none, all right? Because there's no number you can add to 104 to make 90. Okay, it just doesn't work. For a supplement, though, you can because the magic number is 180. So you take 180, subtract your 104, and the angle that is supplement to that one is 76 degrees. So that is the answer you would have for that. Okay, but if there is no complement or no supplement, whichever the case may be, you write none. Okay, but you don't see that happening too often. Okay. All right, and then the very last part of our notes is going to go back and talk to us about parallel lines. Okay, we're going to talk about parallel lines, and the symbol for parallel lines that you can use instead of writing the word out every time is a slanted set of parallel lines. It's not straight up and down. Okay, and parallel lines are two lines that never intersect. That means they never cross and are the same distance apart. And the reason we're talking about parallel lines here is because when you have parallel lines, right, with another line thrown in, you get angles created off of this. All right, so with this other line, though, it's called a transversal. Anything that transverses something crosses through it. right? So a transversal is a line that cuts through parallel lines. All right, so when we're talking about a picture of this, and that's all we're going to do here is draw a picture and name some of the angles that are in it. Okay, there's no measurements we're going to deal with just yet. All right, draw yourself a parallel set of lines. Remember, lines have arrows at the end of them. There's your parallel lines. Never going to cross, no angles formed, it is what it is. But as soon as you throw a transversal in, a line that cuts through those parallel lines, you have now created 8 different angles. So watch as I number them. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So one line through parallel lines created 8 different angles happening. From this information, we can name the types that we've got. And remember, this is called your transversal right here. That's the line that cut through. All right, so based on the 4 types that we talked about previously in these notes, the main ones that you can pull off of a picture like this that you can find numbers and calculations with are the supplementary ones and the vertical ones. So what we're going to do is run a list of who's vertical and who's supplementary. Now the ones that happen to be supplementary are also adjacent. All right. So for vertical angles, remember they're the ones that are straight across from each other. The only thing they share in common is that vertex at the center. Okay, so angles 1 and angles 3 are a pair of vertical angles. Angle 2 and angle 4 are a pair of vertical angles. Angle 5 and angle 7 are a pair of vertical angles. Angle 6 and angle 8 are a pair of vertical angles. Remember, vertical angles are equal to each other. So angle 1 equals angle 3, angle 2 equals angle 4, 5 equals 7, 6 equals 8. So when you know that angle 1 is 120 degrees, you also know angle 3 is 120 degrees. Okay, you know that angle 5 is 120 degrees. Angle 7 is 120 degrees. Okay, because all 4 of those angles are the same size in this picture. Okay, now if I tell you that angle 2 is 60 degrees, then that means angle 4 is 60 degrees. And then angle 6 is 60 degrees, and angle 8 is 60 degrees. So just by knowing one number of the picture, you can fill in all the other numbers without ever touching a protractor. That's what's nice about these words. All right, so then we've got our vertical angles. Right? The last thing we want to identify are the supplementary angles. Let's see if I can squeeze this in down here, and then we'll be finished. All right, remember that supplementary angles are the ones that make a straight line happen, okay, and they're the ones that total 180. All right, so if you look in our picture, the ones that make a straight line are angles 1 and angle 2, angle 3 and angle 4, angle 5 and 6, angle 7 and 8, and then make sure you go back and look. You have angles 1 and angle 4 that make a straight line. You have angle 2 and angle 3 that make a straight line. You have angle 5 and angle 8, and you have angle 6 and angle 7. And if you go back and look at our numbers that we've already put in here, all of these angle pairs should total 180 because they make a straight line. 120 plus 60 is 180. 60 plus 120 is 180. 60 plus 120 is 180. So all the way around, you're going to get that these pairs total 180. That's how you know you've done it right. Okay, so we're going to keep identifying all these types of angles through every single picture we do, right? And try to get you really good at it because you don't get a protractor for this and you have to know your numbers and how to subtract. It's just subtraction. That's the only math that's involved. You just have to know how to get to the right pieces at the right time. All right, so we'll practice a whole lot more with this in class, but this is your information to get started with.